I'm Ken Carkhuff. I am the Learning Director and a Small Business Professor at Defense Acquisition University. This is the All Things Small Business podcast. I'm the co-producer, and my fellow co-producer, Dr. Renee Reynolds, is behind the camera doing all the technology things. So thank you, Renee. We're glad that you're with us. This is another great opportunity to talk about things that impact the small business that support the defense industrial base. And we have a really special guest today, and I'll let her introduce herself in a minute, but she is the Director of the Navy Office of Small Business Programs, Miss Arveice Washington. I've known her for about 10 years. She's really passionate about what she does. She's got a great reputation, and she's got a really good story to tell. So today, we're really gonna focus on how did she get where she is, and things that she can talk to you, and maybe you can learn a little bit about how she went from where she was to the Director of the Navy Small Business Office. So, Miss Arveice, may I call you Arveice?
Absolutely,
All right.
Ken.
We're still friends,
We're
right?
still friends.
We'll
always be friends.
Matter of fact, I'm wearing my Naval Postgraduate
Yes.
shirt, so
Go Navy.
I think with 40 years in Navy, I think I can carry a little bit of water for the Navy
You're
today,
going to carry
too.
it for life.
All right, so
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Ken, for having me here today. And so happy to be joining you in this podcast with the Defense Acquisition University. It's very important for us to be able to share with our internal community, but also our external community, our industry. Those are partners that we have that help us
Absolutely.
as a Department of the Navy be successful. And when I say Department of the Navy, I mean the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Red.
So don't lose sight of the Marine
for
Corps.
you Marines out there, there's the red.
That's it. So Ken, just to talk a little bit about my journey and how I got to the position that I'm in as the Director of the Department of Navy Small Business Programs, a little different path. Started off in industry. So worked for a large business prime, but realized that just wasn't the right fit for me. Personality-wise, also where I was in my life with my family,
Okay.
and navigated there, had the opportunity, was introduced to a small business, and joined that small business and grew professionally and personally while I was there. That's where I found home.
Okay.
Small businesses, in very small community, family friendly. Was very important for me with small kids at the time, but it also gave me the opportunity to cross different functional areas. So even though my focus was financial management, I crossed over and had to move into a program management role when opportunities opened up. The company was going public, so I had some exposure there in managing the finances and what that impact on decisions that the government makes, especially when it comes to procurements and us going after future opportunities. So some exposure there. And then in about 16 years ago, I had the opportunity to come on the government side.
So let's peel the onion back a little bit before you go government.
Yes.
So I also spent some time in industry,
Yes.
in small business, and we know that when you go to the water cooler, the line's not very deep in small businesses. So there are going to be a lot of folks, probably folks that are small business professionals, contracting officers, government members of the defense acquisition workforce, and you are critical to doing what we need to do, but many don't have a background in industry. So is there a difference between being a part of a team in a large business and then slaving over to small business? What are some of the differences?
Absolutely, it is a big difference. When you are working at a small business, you don't necessarily have stovepipe positions where people at different levels in the VP organization are there to focus on the business development, to focus on the payments and the back payments, to focus on that program management piece.
So it's flatter organization.
It's a flatter organization, which gives you the opportunity to be able to cross-functionally train and give you that experience in those different functional areas.
Awesome.
At large businesses, they typically have individuals at various levels in the organization doing the business development. You're more focused on what that program manager, that financial manager, logistics manager that you're supporting and the tasks that are associated with that. But you aren't necessarily doing a direct business development as you would if you were in a small business.
So from the large business experience, and obviously it's a data point of one, but did you see that there was a focus on small business utilization from a large business perspective? What did you see?
Oh, Ken, silly. So, definitely opened my eyes up when I came to the small business and was a subcontractor.
Okay.
When I was working at the prime and for two major large primes supporting the Department of the Navy and DOD overall, the focus was more on your quality output in the area that you were supporting.
Okay.
We did not get into subcontracting management. We did not focus on, if we had someone on our team or maybe that worked in the same office that was from a small business or a subcontractor, it was transparent to us.
Okay.
Working, for these larger firms, but there wasn't much focus on that small business utilization.
Okay, so I think learning points that you have in the back of your head. So now you transition to government. You decide, I'm going to go to the government. All right.
Came over to the government about 16 years ago and transitioned from what at my time was a passion in business and financial management. That's where I had grown organically.
That's not so much mine, just so you know. That's not so much mine.
Well, it's not mine anymore either. That's now small business. But it came over on the government side. The opportunity presented itself as a business and financial manager under NAVC, one of their PEO organizations there.
Naval Sea Systems Command.
Naval Sea
For those that don't
Systems
know,
Command.
they produce ships.
That's it. They buy
and submarines.
all things ships and submarines.
That's right. Great opportunities for business.
And one of the larger organizations under the Department of the Navy. So many opportunities there for small business. Joined NAVC in 2007 timeframe and grew from there quickly from business financial management to program management. I think the experience that I gained as the small business and working in that program management capacity, the small business at the time had gone public. Okay. So tracking their invoices, which was very important when I came on the government side and was the super core at Naval Sea Systems Command. The decisions that we, the government, make, the continuing resolution, that's something that we're going through now, that impact on small businesses and their ability to be able to grow, they'll be able to pay their people. Those decisions have an impact.
So
on
cash
small
flow
business.
is key.
Cash flow is king.
King, that's king.
It's king.
King and
It's
queen.
more than king, right?
And you mentioned CORE, Contracting Officer Representative.
Contracting Officer Representative.
You did what? What's your principal role for maybe those that maybe don't have a government contract yet, may someday be working with a CORE? What does that mean?
So the Contracting Officer Representative is that contracting person on the technical side of the house. Okay. That's the simplest way that I can put it. The Contracting Officer Representative, or CORE, does not have the authority to sign the government up to anything. So for those in industry, if you're talking to COREs and they're saying, I want you to go and do X, and that X is not a part of your statement of work, you should not be doing it. You need to go back to that contracting officer.
Pay attention.
That's at that organization.
We're kicking the virtual podium or the podcast podium right now.
Yes, you cannot see my foot stomp under the table.
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm going to be speaking at an NCMA event in Jacksonville, and that's one of the key points we're going to make. It's a 2-hour seminar on small business and the utilization of small businesses and the role that a small business professional plays in the acquisition planning.
Yes.
And we want to make that point key to the folks that are from industry, that you must know your contract, you must know the terms and conditions, and you must know that only the contracting officer can commit the government or direct changes. A technical person cannot direct changes. That's a key point you're making.
That's it.
You got a ton of information, you got a ton of knowledge here, and we just got you in the government. I came in 2008, so I think we basically grew up together in the Navy, and our paths kind of crossed. Now, I was going to say collided, but that might be that's not a nice way. They crossed in a good way a couple years later, which you'll get there. So now you're in the government, you're doing good things, and what happens?
So, working in Team Submarine under Naval Sea Systems Command, very large organization. So, I don't know many small businesses that can build a ship or submarine.
But we're looking for one.
We're keeping that door open. So, the majority of the opportunities in that space is subcontracting. Right. Mm-hmm. And the acquisition community in the early 2000 time frame, and just from my perspective, was other than small business friendly. Right. So those large primes, just due to the nature of what they buy at Naval Sea Systems Command. And in doing so, as the contracting officer representative, I was responsible for implementing, taking their 5 separate, we call them contractor support services contracts, and making them into one enterprise-wide so that there was consistency with execution across all of these contracts.
Kind of consolidation?
Not a consolidation, because what we did was we had one small business set aside, and then we had one statement of work that we made multiple awards from. Okay. So the one small business set aside was for one program office that we identified was an area that would allow small businesses to grow developmentally in all functional areas, program management, financial management, etc. And then we had these larger contracts that supported our programs that were more complex.
Okay.
And there were small business subcontracting plans there.
Which is a great way to get in. If you're a small business and you're looking to get in with an agency or maybe DOD for the first time, look for those subcontracting opportunities. You learn, you get past performance, you can get credit for that now for your past performance. It's an excellent way. So be looking for those subcontracting opportunities.
Absolutely. And in doing so, these larger complex programs, Virginia class, at the time it was Ohio class, all of those subsystems that go on submarines, more complex. So looking at, they were not small business necessarily friendly in that we were used to having who we had supporting our offices. So changing that culture was key at the time.
That's kind of like the easy button. Just go to the large prime, they'll do everything, right?
That's it.
And getting that finger off the easy button, not so easy, right?
Not so easy. So now you got me here to chop that finger when you try to push that easy
there
button,
you go.
Right, kid?
That's right.
So what we did, just to kind of fast forward, is it took me a culture change, right? I was that program manager that was supporting and making sure that I got my acquisition community to support that they said that they needed, because I wasn't educated. So you've talked about that small business professional getting in early, being a part of that acquisition process, understanding your customers, what their needs are, but also understanding that small business industrial base that's there to support that.
Absolutely.
And that was something that I needed to learn and grow into. So fast forward, we executed a contract, and what I'd like to advertise is the baby that I envisioned was not the baby that I birthed. Okay. It was, so there were opportunities there for small business at that subcontracting level, but it was not challenged. We didn't push the envelope, okay? When it came time to do what that follow-on contract strategy is, I had the opportunity just to grow developmentally and do a rotational opportunity in the Department of Navy's Office of Small Business Programs, and I think that's where I met you.
That's where we met. And what was the motivation for you to pick that as a rotation?
So, in my role as a contracting officer representative, I recognized that under those contracts, we weren't pushing the envelope. There were some things internally in the Department of the Navy where we were standing up. We had taken our core program offline, recertifying everyone. I educated myself on the core responsibilities, but more importantly, looking at that small business utilization factor in those contracts. Because I worked and had come from a small business in industry, it was very apparent to me, and one of my focuses was making sure that those small businesses got paid on time.
That's it.
That was very key. And making sure that they had positions that the primes, when they bid these contracts and it came with these teams, that work that they said that they would give to these small businesses in these different areas, holding them accountable for that. So I put a seed role in the contract to have these primes report to me monthly where they were with payments, where they were with filling those positions, what positions were vacant, what positions, and if they were looking to make a change from this small business, maybe bringing it in-house, that I monitored that.
So you mentioned a couple things there. So in the pre-planning phase, you need to do the market research and understand the market of what's can the market bear on subcontracting opportunities.
Yes.
And then once the contract is, you said, executed
Yes.
or awarded, you have to monitor the compliance with that subcontracting plan. It looked like you took some extra steps.
Proactive approach.
Proactive approach, self-learning,
Yes.
probably, trial by error maybe, but putting some muscles behind that. So number one, how did the large prime respond, and what were some of the outputs of that effort you put into it?
So there was some discontent
Okay.
early on because
You're saying that politely?
I'm saying that politely. When we identified what prime, so we did four contract awards, four large prime contract awards, what primes were going to get what work, and then as a subset of what work they were getting, how much were they keeping in-house, and then holding them accountable to that teaming arrangement that they had. Now, in many other cases, I would hear, well, the work that I was bidding this subcontractor for, you didn't award to me. I was going to give them this work over here under X.
That's the dog ate my homework.
But you gave me work under B. So holding their feet to the fire, holding them accountable, ensuring that they were doing their, putting a good faith effort in saying how they were going to move work around to ensure that they had a robust team, but also pouring something into these small businesses that would give them that past performance that they could go off and compete on prime.
And that good faith, that's the measurement that we use. That's a standard in the Federal Acquisition Regulation, is the prime making good faith effort to comply with that subcontracting plan.
Absolutely.
So all of that was part of the motivation to go take
All
your
of
rotation.
that
Okay.
was motivation, and just recognizing that I didn't know and wasn't educated on the full small business program. This was something that I was managing, which was a small but large portfolio, and I had some growth opportunity to do there. I certainly did not know that every federal agency had a small business office with a leadership that was appointed and a direct report to that secretary in that organization. That was a learning opportunity for me. And I tell you, once I had the chance to come over and do a 9-month rotation in the Department of Navy's Office of Small Business Programs, it changed my whole mindset about the small business program, but recognizing what I didn't know, and my advocacy for small business was probably tenfold across our acquisition workforce, so that it was going to take a culture change in order for us to make a big difference about small business in our acquisitions.
And understanding that is really important. And this may be a kind of a shout out for those that are in the acquisition workforce that maybe have never been in a small business office for a rotation or a shadowing or whatever. Generally, the feedback that I hear from students in class almost exclusively is, I had an opportunity to go work in the small business office for X amount of time, or I did this or that, and I fell in love with it, and I am never going back, or as soon as I get the opportunity after I complete my training, I'm going to go back there. Generally, that's the response, and I think you're a living example that you came out of program management, which is very busy, very technical discipline, and right now, small business is actually a knowledge area that's homeroomed under program management.
Absolutely.
So you stepped out of program management into the small business knowledge area, but fell in love with it.
I did.
So what happened post-rotation?
So when I came, learned about the small business program, the opportunities there, did a 9-month rotation, and when I went back to my organization in a more senior role, so before I was managing the support services contract, now I was the director of acquisition and contracts across the entire portfolio. And looking at all of the acquisitions that had to go up to senior leader, the PEO, for signature, I had to review them. And I reviewed them not just for technical competency, but I reviewed them from a small business perspective. Is there opportunity, and what is the opportunity? What does that market research look like? And then also, we're talking small business, but I don't want to lose sight of the SBIR, the Small Business Innovative Research as well, because that has to be addressed in these acquisitions. Right. So when I came back to Team Submarine under the Naval Sea Systems Command, it was an opportunity for me to you sacrifice one to come back and train the masses. So I started holding brown bags every month, and they grew. So at first,
what's a brown bag?
A brown bag. So brown bags is kind of a lunch opportunity where you come. It's very informal. Everybody brings their brown bag lunch, and we sit around the table and learn. I led a discussion about small business, educating our community, and I started with the cores. I made it the cores' responsibility because as the core certification manager for Team Submarine, I was responsible for ensuring that they had training. And I use this as a training opportunity. I use this as an opportunity to change a mindset and a culture. And then they would take that, and as they work through their contracts, holding those primes accountable became apparent, and we started making change. So what I would like to share is in the 2015 timeframe, our Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition recognized that small business wasn't being implemented consistently across the Department of the Navy, 8 Navy, 2 Marine Corps commands. And he signed out a memo requesting everyone had to write a small business strategy at the 10 major buying activities. Right. They had to identify areas of opportunity for small business. They had to implement training. So we had small business advocate training, but more importantly, those deputy program managers that were in these PEOs were designated as small business advocates. So what I'd like to say is the Department of the Navy has been in the business of small business since 2015. And from there, we've seen growth over the last 6 years, 30% increase in small business performance. And I think it's a direct result of this advocacy.
I fully agree. That 30% increase in small business performance is in areas that you need to work. It's not just about getting a contract in place. It's about getting the requirements met. And I remember all of those memos, and I can think back when I was in small business at the Naval Air Systems Command, buying the aircraft for Navy and Marine Corps programs. And I could see over the couple of years from 2015 to 2019 when I left, when I first started with that memo coming out, you didn't see anything in an acquisition plan about small business. By the time I left, you would not believe what those deputy program managers were getting written into those acquisition plans about small business, the market research, all the planning they did. And I had one deputy program manager, she's an SAS now, she actually got a Navy award for small business. She said, Ken, nothing leaves my office to come to your office until I see it. So this is a GS-15 deputy program manager that's overseeing other GS-15 work, saying nothing on market research and analysis, small business focus, leaves our office, our program management office, until I review it. That was a super sea change. And I think the Navy is reaping the benefits of that because one, it's done with what the work you're getting. Exactly. And folks like you are now at the SES level that are able to take that experience, that knowledge, and get out there and basically train and educate and develop the workforce to do these things.
That culture change became very apparent. It took us a number of years, right? 2 to 3 years, because we had to train and educate the workforce. But can I tell you, we have a Secretary of the Navy that is very in tune to small business. So as a former small business owner himself, he called in my predecessor within 2 weeks of being on the job to say, what are we doing with small business? Because he sat on that side of the table. And he knew that there were some real changes. So we were doing some good things, but we weren't done, and we still aren't done. I had the opportunity to sit in a leadership meeting. The secretary leads these quarterly executive offsites where he brings in the leadership from each of the 10 major buying activities, but down to the PEO level, the program executive officer level. And they get up and they have to brief their portfolio, what's working, what's not working, but most importantly, what are they doing with small business? What do their goals look like? Where are their pain points? Because this is an opportunity for some collaborations, for some best practices, some sharing of lessons learned. So I was very proud to say, and the secretary would ask them the frank question, okay, well, I hear you're doing these things, but what about small business? Have you considered small business in these areas?
Yeah, but that's a question that you got to be ready to answer.
You got to be ready to answer, and they all know.
They all know.
And more importantly, when the CEOs from our large primes come in to talk to him, they know the first question that they get, what are we doing with small business?
And I think it's really unique because he's a retired naval officer.
Yes.
So he brings warfighting experience.
Yes.
And he brings small business experience.
Absolutely.
And he's super interested in making sure that the industrial base is properly sized to meet Navy requirements. And the Navy's got a lot of things going on with shipbuilding programs and the new submarine, the Columbia class, lots of things going on, and probably lots of opportunities.
Lots of opportunities there, and particular ensuring that we maintain that we are warfighting ready. That small business industrial base is key to making sure that we are successful in being warfighting ready. But most importantly, our small business professional community needs to understand the requirements in their organization, where there are opportunities for small business. If there are things that can be set aside for small business, then where we can grow there.
So if you'd be willing, maybe we'd have you come back at a future date and we could drill a little more into all the things the Navy's really doing. But I'm still interested in the story of you had a rotation, you went back to Team Submarine. I think you wound up being the deputy in the office for a while.
I was the director of acquisition and contracts.
Okay.
So all of the acquisitions came through me before they went to senior leadership.
Right, but I think then you went back to the...
And then I came back to the Office of Small Business
deputy,
as
right?
the deputy director there.
And then somehow you wound up being the director.
So I have, but maybe that's a conversation for another day.
Maybe we'll key that off on another time.
Let's keep it going.
So, I mean, obviously you're passionate.
I am.
And obviously you're very busy, but if you would graciously be willing to come back another time and share with us, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the opportunity,
welcome.
Kim, to join you today.
Well, hopefully you'll have as much fun listening to this podcast as Arveice and I have had doing it. It's a wealth of information. It's for industry, it's for government, it's for academia. And if you really like what you hear, please be an advocate, share the podcast, recommend it, use it as training. And we want to help you in every way we can make sure that the small businesses are providing what we need for our warfighters to meet the national defense strategy and make sure that our warfighters are always able to execute their mission and get home safely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Kim, for having me.
My pleasure. It's been great.